The hum of the Virelian's engines was steady, soft enough to fade into the background, yet deep enough to remind everyone on board that they were moving fast, crossing sectors where a wrong move could mean being too far from help. To most of the crew, it was just another quiet cycle, a rare gift after weeks of pressure. To Cale Ronan, it felt wrong. He sat alone at the edge of the lower observation deck, staring at the curve of space as the ship cut through it, his reflection faint against the glass. Everything felt still, too still, and stillness on a military vessel often carried teeth hidden beneath it. He had taken his jacket off and rested it over the rail, the collar still stained faintly from the last training rotation. Bruises lined his knuckles, mostly healed now, but still stiff. Even in calm, his body carried reminders of how fragile quiet moments could be. Footsteps approached, measured and unmistakable. Commander Alira Voss stepped into view, her armor plates catching a muted glimmer from the deck lights. She wasn't wearing her helmet, which meant she was choosing to talk, not patrol. "You look like someone expecting a fight," she said, her voice flat but with a note that might almost recall curiosity. Cale didn't look away from the stars. "Do I look like I ever stop expecting one?" Alira walked to his side, resting her hands lightly on the rail. "You don't relax. Even when the whole ship does, you look like someone waiting for the ceiling to drop." "Because it usually does," Cale replied. Then, after a pause, "The enemy doesn't need to hit us with fleets when they're already in our systems. We both know it." She didn't deny it, only tilted her head slightly. The crew was adjusting. After everything, they deserve at least a moment to breathe. "Breathing is what gets people killed," Cale muttered, shaking his head. "Someone's moving pieces. Alira. They know where to press, how to make us look at one thing while they hit somewhere else." Alira gave him a sidelong glance. "You're thinking about that silent mind again." "I can't stop thinking about it," he admitted. "Every time something feels off, I wonder if it's them, if we're already inside someone else's plan." She rested an elbow on the rail, her stance deceptively casual but eyes sharp as ever. "It's good to be cautious, Cale, but don't let paranoia do their job for them. You keep carrying all of this on your back, you'll break before they ever get the chance to try." He finally looked at her then, a faint smirk ghosting over his lips. "Is that your version of comfort?" "It's my version of advice," she said simply. They stood in silence for a long moment, watching the endless sprawl of stars. The ship vibrated slightly as it passed through a field of debris, shields dispersing it with a faint flash that illuminated their faces for a heartbeat. Cale finally straightened. "Training schedule's light for the next cycle. I'll run the squad through readiness drills anyway. I want them sharp if something breaks." "Always the optimist," Alira said dryly. He picked up his jacket, slinging it over his shoulder. "Someone has to be." As they turned to leave the observation deck, the distant rumble of the engine seemed deeper, like the Virelian itself was listening. It had carried them through war and betrayal before, and now it carried secrets Cale could feel, but not yet see. The calm would hold, but it was already too thin to trust. Tivo Vrel's workshop was never quiet, even when he wasn't there. The faint whine of active scanners, the rhythmic hum of field generators, and the occasional hiss from cooling valves gave it a restless, alive quality, as if the room itself disliked stillness. Cale stepped inside and immediately ducked to avoid a dangling cable before it could clip him in the face. "Don't touch anything that glows red," Tivo's voice called from behind the terminal stack, "unless you like nerve spasms in places you didn't know you had nerves." Cale raised an eyebrow as Tivo emerged, feathers slightly ruffled, goggles perched over 2 of his 6 eyes, while the other 4 blinked at different rhythms. Zelene, his assistant, leaned against a nearby table, arms folded, looking unimpressed by both her boss and the chaos around them. "This isn't a social call, is it?" Zelene asked flatly. Cale shook his head. "I hear you've been digging again." Tivo's feathers puffed slightly, either pride or annoyance. It was hard to tell. "Digging is an ugly word. I've been investigating patterns. Which, by the way, should be impossible for anyone but me to notice. Yet here we are." He tapped the console, and a holoscreen flickered to life, showing shifting strands of data in color-coded pulses. "See this? Micro-routing signals through our engineering decks. It looks like simple maintenance traffic power allocation, coolant cycle logs. But the timing? Too precise. These hits come every 8 hours, 30 seconds long, right during shift rotations when half the deck is blind to low-priority signals. Someone's been mapping our system like they're sketching a doorframe before picking the lock. Kale stepped closer, studying the streams of data. Could it just be faulty programming? Zelene snorted. That's cute. No, this is intentional. Whoever's doing it knows how to leave no footprint except the one they want us to find. You're saying it's bait, Kale said, eyes narrowing. Or a test, Tivo added, his voice dropping slightly. This is the kind of thing you do to measure response times. See who notices. And honestly, no one but me should have noticed. Whoever it is, they're confident, maybe even arrogant. Kale straightened, rubbing the back of his neck. You're telling me the same thing Alira's been saying all week, that someone's already inside or at least knows how to act like they are. Tivo spread his arms dramatically. Exactly, which is why you're here, because I know what you're thinking. And yes, I already checked. This isn't random static. It's a deliberate path being carved, like someone preparing a corridor no one else can see yet. Zelene's voice cut through, calm and sharp. And when someone builds a corridor, they eventually walk through it. Kale exhaled slowly. All right, lock this down. No official channels, no routine reports. Just you, Zelene, and me. Alira gets a copy, no one else. Tivo's feathers flattened slightly, seriousness overtaking his usual manic energy. Understood. But Kale, if this is who we think it is, they're not just scouting, they're rehearsing. Kale met his gaze, eyes hard. Then let's make sure they choke on their own script. The three exchanged a look, a silent agreement layered with something heavier. Trust was rare, and what little they had now felt even more fragile. Kale knew one thing for sure as he left the workshop. This wasn't random, and it wasn't over. Someone was moving under their feet, and it was time to decide whether to chase shadows or drag them into the light. The council chamber on the Verilion had been designed for calm deliberation. Its circular layout meant to give every voice equal weight, but on this cycle it felt like anything but calm. Soft blue lighting traced the edges of the table, casting long shadows across the polished floor, where every footstep seemed louder than usual. Lady Aries Solene sat at the central chair, her posture straight but not rigid, the quiet authority of someone used to balancing diplomacy with military command. Marshal Renhalvik stood opposite her, broad-shouldered and blunt as always, his uniform immaculate despite the strain in his voice. A few other senior officers filled the seats, silent observers in a room that had stopped feeling neutral the moment the topic turned toward infiltration. I'm saying we can't keep waiting, Halvik said, one palm striking lightly against the edge of the table. The Obsidian Pact is moving faster than we're willing to admit. Silent assassins, data breaches, engineered disappearances. How many signs do we need before we act? Ares folded her hands gently, her voice measured. And what exactly do you propose, Marshal? Mass loyalty screenings? Public arrests? Panic has a way of breaking a crew faster than any enemy can. We already know infiltration is possible. Overreacting will only make it easier for them to hide, while everyone looks over their shoulder instead of forward. Halvik frowned, leaning slightly forward. With respect, my lady, paranoia can be managed. Dead crew members can't. The room went quiet for a moment, the unspoken weight of his words settling like cold iron. Ares took a slow breath, steady but not dismissive. I understand your urgency, Run, she said softly, but I will not treat every loyal officer and engineer as a potential traitor, because our enemy wants us to. That's their game. Make us distrust each other until we do their job for them. A voice from one of the council seats, an intelligence officer with sharp eyes and a tight jaw. Cut in. There are rumors circulating through lower decks already. People are whispering about outside influence on Dominion Command. The longer we wait, the harder it'll be to control the narrative. Ares glanced toward him, then back to Halvik. And whose narrative do you think benefits from that rumor spreading? Ours or theirs? Halvik exhaled through his nose, clearly frustrated but keeping his composure. So what? We sit on our hands and wait for them to strike? I'd rather take heat for overreaction then regret inaction. Before Ares could respond, Alira Voss stepped from her position near the door, speaking for the first time since the session began. Fear is exactly what they want. If we fracture, if we start questioning every face on this ship, we lose. And they win without ever firing a shot. Ares gave her a brief nod of gratitude, then turned back to Halvik. Marshal, your concerns are valid. We will tighten security protocols quietly, and I'll authorize limited internal monitoring. But we will not allow this ship to turn on itself. If we lose trust, we lose the one weapon that the Obsidian Pact can't replicate. Halvik hesitated, then gave a short nod, though the tension in his shoulders remained. Fine, but when this blows up, and it will, I hope restraint doesn't cost us lives. Ares looked at him steadily, her voice calm but edged. Restraint saves lives too, Marshal. Let's not forget that. The meeting ended without ceremony, officers rising from their seats and filing out in silence, the heavy weight of unresolved disagreement clinging to the room. As Ares remained seated for a moment longer, Alira approached, her voice low enough not to carry. They're feeling it, my lady. The pressure, and pressure like this is exactly what the silent mind feeds on. Ares stared at the empty chairs, her jaw tightening slightly. Then we don't feed them. We starve them. Alira, no cracks, no fear. If they want a war whispers, we'll answer with silence of our own. Our silence, not theirs. She stood, straightened her jacket, and left the chamber without looking back. Every step controlled but heavy with the knowledge that trust itself had become a battleground. Kale Ronan stood in the secured operations bay, arms folded as a stream of encrypted data floated on the holoscreen in front of him. Alira Voss stood at his side, her helmet clipped to her belt, but her stance just as sharp as if she were in full combat posture. Across from them, Tivo Vrel leaned over a console, claws moving fast as he cross-linked signals, his feathers puffing slightly every time a new anomaly lit up in red. Zelene sat behind him, eyes fixed on a secondary monitor, calm but visibly alert. Here's what your little ghost has been up to, Tivo said, tapping a glowing node on the display. Maintenance requests, cargo routing, and power grid calibration reports. All fake. Whoever's behind this knows how to build paper trails that look legitimate but don't actually link anywhere. They've been using it to sneak data packets out through a buried relay. Kale frowned, stepping closer. How long has it been there? Weeks. Maybe longer, Zelene replied. But it's buried deep, disguised as an old power regulator. You'd never notice unless you were looking for mismatched signal phase shifts. We only found it because Tivo cross-checked two logs that shouldn't overlap. Alira's jaw tightened. So we've been leaking information and didn't even know it. Tivo held up one claw. Technically not leaking. More like whispering. Small stuff, easily ignored. But the pattern is what matters. Whoever this is, they're patient. They're testing how far they can push before we notice. Kale studied the highlighted relay, his mind already running scenarios. We pull it now. They know we're onto them. We leave it. They keep feeding out whatever they want. Alira's voice was low, calculated. Then we feed them something back. Set the trap. Give them data they think is gold. And see who picks it up. Tivo grinned, an edge of satisfaction in his tone. Finally, someone talking my language. I can set up a false data stream. Security protocols, fleet movement patterns, something juicy enough they can't resist. Zelene added, and we can track their response time, see where they route it, and maybe, just maybe, pull the thread hard enough to see what unravels. Kale glanced at Alira. We're talking about baiting a ghost. You good with that? She gave him a sharp nod. Better than waiting for them to make the next move. Let's drag them out into the open. Ares Soline's voice came over secure calm but firm. Make sure it's clean. No mistakes. If this is the silent mind, they'll know if we try to box them in. Then we won't box them, Kale replied. We'll give them a door and see who walks through it. Tivo's claws danced over controls, weaving together streams of false data, layered with subtle markers only his systems could trace. Zelene mirrored his work, cross-verifying every link. Alira stood silent, watching like a hawk, her hand resting casually, but not really casually, on the grip of her sidearm. Done. TiVo said at last, feathers flattening back into place. The hooks in the water. Kale exhaled through his nose. Now we wait. Alira's gaze shifted to him. You don't like waiting. Not when I know what's at the end of it, he muttered. The room settled into an uneasy quiet, the hum of systems filling the space, as if even the ship itself were holding its breath. Somewhere, out in the deep architecture of their own network, someone was about to take the bait. And when they did, Kale intended to make sure the hunter knew what it felt like to be hunted. The bait didn't sit long. Within hours, TiVo Vrel's console lit up with a silent alert, a soft chime too subtle for most ears but enough to make his feathers rise. Zelene immediately froze mid-motion, eyes flicking to the stream of code flowing across her monitor. They took it, TiVo said, his voice sharp but low. Our ghost bit faster than I expected. They pulled the entire false protocol string and mirrored it through 3 relay hops. One of them is local. Kale Ronan leaned over the console, scanning the highlighted trace. Local? As in someone on this ship? Lower decks. Maintenance section near the coolant regulators. Zelene confirmed. This was routed through a portable node. Smart move, easy to carry, hard to detect. Alira Voss tightened her stance, helmet snapping down with a soft click. We move now. No broadcast. If they're still there, we take them quietly. Ari Soline's voice carried through secure comms, even in calm but with an edge of intent. Keep them alive if possible. We need answers, not bodies. Kale nodded, motioning to Lyra as they slipped out of the operations bay, moving fast but silent. Zelene fed location data to their visors as TiVo monitored the trace from his console, his claws flying as he locked down every possible exit point. The maintenance corridor was dim, lit only by the low red glow of standby systems. The hum of the ship's coolant lines masked their footsteps as they approached the small side compartment. Alira motioned for Kale to flank the opposite side before she hit the door override. Inside, a crewman froze mid-action, a small relay node in his hands, wires still dangling. His eyes widened when he saw Alira's armor and Kale's weapon drawn. Don't, Kale said simply, voice sharp and commanding. The man hesitated, then dropped the node. Alira stepped in, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him against the wall before he could react. Name, she demanded. Darren, just a tech. His words cut off as Alira pressed closer, her voice lowering dangerously. You got about 5 seconds before I stop asking nicely. Kale crouched, scanning the relay. This isn't random scavenging. This is linked directly into NAV protocols. Who gave you this? The crewman swallowed, eyes darting. I don't know names. I just pass data when I'm told. Encrypted drop points. No questions. Who tells you? Kale pressed. The man hesitated, fear flickering across his face before he whispered. They called him the Veiled Hand. Alira looked at Kale sharply. That's a handler designation. Black Ops level. Before Kale could respond, the man suddenly arched, body jerking violently as a thin stream of blood ran from his nose. A faint sizzling sound came from a chip behind his ear, implanted and now burned out. His body went limp, collapsing to the deck. Dead. Alira said flatly, checking for a pulse. Failsafe implant. Someone didn't want him talking. Kale exhaled, jaw tightening. They knew this might happen, maybe even planned for it. Back in the operations bay, TiVo cursed under his breath as the trace vanished from his console. They wiped the entire chain, like it was never there. Zelene closed her eyes briefly, then said, they were ready for the trap. This was either a sacrifice or a message. Kale looked at Alira, voice quiet but grim. We're not dealing with a stray agent anymore. This is networked, organized, and 2 steps ahead. Alira straightened, her visor reflecting the low red glow of the corridor. Then we stop thinking like we're hunting one person. We start thinking like we're at war with the system. Kale nodded, lifting the dead man's relay node. Then let's dismantle it, piece by piece, until there's nothing left of their system to hide behind. The secure briefing room was crowded, tension clinging to the air heavier than the recycled oxygen itself. Marshal Ren Halvik stood stiff at the far end of the table, his jaw clenched tight as he replayed the helmet cam footage of the captured crewman's final moments. Every time a man jerked and collapsed, Halvik's hands tightened into fists until he finally snapped the feed off with a sharp flick. "This is exactly what I warned about," Halvik said, his voice raised but controlled. "We're sitting here, letting them move inside our walls, and now we have proof they've been here long enough to plant handlers and neural failsafes. You don't do that overnight. This infiltration is deeper than we thought." Kale Ronan stood on the other side of the table, arms crossed. No one's denying that, but tearing the ship apart in panic isn't going to solve it. "Panic?" Halvik barked, his eyes narrowing. "Is that what you think this is? We have enemy assets walking around in Dominion uniforms, manipulating data streams and murdering informants, and you want restraint." Kale didn't flinch. "I want precision. You start blanket searching people, questioning loyalty on open channels. You'll be handing the silent mind exactly what they want, distrust. They thrive on fracture. Break this crew's unity, and you'll be doing their work for them." Elira Voss, standing near the doorway, stepped forward. "Kale's right. We need to move, but clean. No wide sweeps, no public accusations. The crew's already on edge after those rumors about command manipulation. Push too hard, and we risk losing control of morale." Halvik slammed his palm on the table. "Morale doesn't matter if half the ship is compromised." Lady Aries Solene, who had been silent until now, finally rose from her seat. Her voice was calm but carried weight that instantly pulled every gaze toward her. "Enough. We will not shout ourselves into decisions." Halvik stiffened. "With respect, my lady, this is bigger than quiet investigations. Whoever is orchestrating this infiltration has reach. We need open sweeps, immediate interrogations. And when your sweeps catch someone innocent..." Aries cut in sharply, her eyes locking onto him. "When your interrogations turn into paranoia and people stop trusting each other enough to function, you want to hand the silent mind their victory? Because that is how you do it." Halvik exhaled hard through his nose, clearly reining himself back, but his posture remained rigid. "And what do you suggest?" "We continue covert tracing," Aries said firmly. "Controlled operations. We tighten access quietly and monitor every secure channel, every relay. And when the next handler moves, we'll be waiting. Not screaming at shadows, but catching something real." Kale nodded once. "She's right. These people are playing the long game. We need to be smarter than them, not louder." Elira added, her tone sharp. "And Halvik, if you want help, focus your efforts on tightening high-level clearance oversight. The silent mind doesn't need low-level chaos. They need someone trusted to make one wrong call." Halvik's eyes flicked to her, and for a moment something unreadable passed over his face before he gave a curt nod. "Fine, but if this plan blows up, don't say I didn't warn you." The room fell silent as Halvik left, his boot striking hard against the deck plating. Kale turned to Aries quietly. "He's under pressure. Could be nothing. Could be exactly what they're aiming for." Aries stared at the closed door, her jaw tight. "Keep an eye on him. Quietly. Paranoia can break a person faster than any enemy agent, and I don't know if Halvik's tipping or being tipped." Elira nodded once, her expression unreadable under the visor. "I'll watch him." Aries looked back at the table, hands resting flat against its surface. "The silent mind wants cracks in this crew. We're not going to give them one. Not a single one." Night's cycle aboard the Virilian always felt different. The main corridors dimmed, replaced by soft guide lights along the deck edges, and the hum of routine work faded into a low, steady rhythm of life support systems and distant engine pulses. For most of the crew, it was a moment to rest, to breathe without the weight of combat or endless readiness drills. For Lady Aries Solene, rest had become something rare, almost foreign. She stood alone at the forward observation deck, hands clasped behind her back as the glass stretched above and below, giving a full view of the stars cutting past like silver rain. The silence here was the kind she could control, unlike the whispers moving through her ship. Every choice felt heavier now, every order carrying the question of who might already be shaping its outcome behind her back. "You should sleep," a voice said softly from behind. Kale Ronan approached, still in partial gear, his jacket unfastened and his eyes carrying the weight of too many thoughts. He stopped next to her, following her gaze out into the void. "Been here long?" "Long enough to remind myself why I do this," Ares replied quietly. "There's a calm out here that doesn't exist anywhere else. But I don't trust it anymore. I keep thinking someone's trying to rewrite what this ship means, what it stands for." Kale rested his hands on the railing. "They want you to think that. They want you second-guessing yourself, your crew, your decisions. If we start questioning every shadow, they win without ever firing a shot." She gave him a faint, tired smile. "You sound like Elira." "She's right," Kale said, turning slightly to face her. "We can't fight this like a normal war. This isn't about who has the bigger ship or the most firepower. It's about clarity and trust. If we lose those, nothing else matters." Ares looked at him, her expression softening but her voice steady. "Then we hold on to them. No matter how dark this gets, we don't let them take that from us. The silent mind thinks they can shape our decisions, manipulate us into breaking ourselves apart. I refuse to let them write my story for me." Kale nodded slowly. "Then we keep moving forward, controlled, quiet, but ready to strike when they slip, because no one's perfect, not even them." She turned back to the stars, the faint reflection of her face overlaying the void. "We'll find them. And when we do, they'll understand what it means to challenge this ship, to challenge me." Kale gave her a firm look. "We'll get them. And when we do, we make sure no one ever tries this again." Ares exhaled slowly, letting the silence settle between them, heavier but steadier now. The hum of the Virelian's engines deepened for a moment as the ship adjusted its trajectory, cutting through space with a grace that belied the weight it carried. "Storm's coming," Kale said quietly. Ares' eyes didn't leave the stars. "Let it. We're ready this time." They stood there together, side by side, two figures framed against the endless dark, both silently committing to a fight that would be won not by brute force, but by resilience and precision. As the ship moved forward, silent and steady, it felt less like a vessel of war and more like a promise.